Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Interactive Futures. This is a session for investors, and it's called Why Invest in Leamington Spa. My name is Claire Green, and I work for the University of Warwick. I head up a creative and digital communities initiative there, and I also run the Creative Futures Incubator based at 1 Mill Street in Leamington. We have got two fantastic speakers today. We've got Alex Toft from the University Science Park with Minerva Business Angels, and we've got Irene Graham from the Scale Up Institute. I'm going to start by running through some key information about Leamington. So I'm going to share my screen now. So creative businesses here are booming. Coventry and Warwickshire have seen the fastest productivity growth since 2009 out of anywhere in the country. And we've been recognised as the largest growing creative cluster outside of Greater London. Leamington Spa is dubbed as Silicon Spa and has got the largest games development cluster here. And we employ over 2,500 people, and we're recognised globally. It's been an attractive place for inward investment, and over the last 30 years have grown more than 7 studios since its start in 2017, and 3 are foreign owned. Now, local studios are hiring, and we are becoming more and more attractive as studios such as Codemasters, Ubisoft, Pixel Toys, Sega and Playground Games really bring the creative talent to the region. Now, within the University of Warwick, about 2 years ago, we decided to really focus on how we better connect with the creative and digital industries that are basically on our doorstep, and how we connect our students, our graduates, but also our staff and our kind of academic research. So I am part of the Warwick Innovation District, and we look at a range of initiatives that kind of help to connect the university with the creative cluster. This includes research transfer, so spin-outs and licenses of new ideas, student entrepreneurship, so we inspire, incubate, educate and incubate the next generation. We build a sort of ecosystem within our science park and Minerva to attract investors to look at the sector. And we look at jobs, so how to make our region grow and prosper and make a good ecosystem for startups and scale-up businesses. And we want to use university research to empower partners with new business models as well. The key thing that I am responsible for is Creative Futures, which is a gateway between the university and the region's creative businesses. And we run a series of events, mentoring and careers clinics for students and graduate entrepreneurs. We also educate, so we look at employability and skills development. And then we incubate. So we have taken a beautiful space within 1 Mill Street where we mentor and coach 5 creative entrepreneurs over a 6-month period. If you're interested in any of these things, then feel free to email me and get in touch. And so within this incubation, we really want to look at how businesses can stay in the region, but also scale and grow in the region too. So we're really looking to work with our partners and to work with people like Minerva and the Scale Up Institute to help that happen and to attract more investors into the region. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our speakers today and to tell you more. Alex, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you. Just let me share my screen. Yes, the beginning. Okay. So what I'm going to talk to you about is building an investor ecosystem, at least what we're trying to do. So Minerva Business Angels is the University of Warwick's, in effect, angel group, but we're a little bit bigger than that. What we are is one of the oldest angel networks in the UK, 1994, beaten by the Scottish, who started in 93. We have the largest number of investment groups in the UK, mainly focused around the Midlands, although we have activity in the Shard in London through Warwick Business School, our partners, together with activity in Cheshire and in Liverpool. And the reason for that is that they share some of the problems that we did. On the right-hand side, you'll see many of our delivery partners, and the model that we tended to follow is work with fellow universities to deliver an angel network. And the reason for that is they provide a beacon to attract investors to the propositions that go through our network. In addition to that, there's also lots of different support that we have available for companies and investors. And the reason why we're doing the digital and creative, of course, is because of the work that Claire's doing and the university supporting that. So we are truly a gateway in terms of our activity in Midlands Innovation, and by that we have associations with the 8 Russell universities in the Midlands, and we work with them in helping them deliver their technology. We also work with another group which basically take intellectual property generated by PhD students and help them commercialize that, and of course we help them take that into the market. And one of the things that we have is a broad church of experience. So we've got people from different walks of life, including the gaming industry. One of our investors made his money out of having a franchise for Iceland, not the country, of course, the supermarket. So we have people who've exited the gaming industry, people in the gaming industry. We have people from technology-based businesses. We have even from construction-based businesses. So it's a very, very broad church. And why is that important? Because they all bring different expertise. So in 2010, the Science Park formed Minerva. It's a brand name. Prior to that, we were more of an informal network. And since 2010, we've invested in 100 companies. In total, 129, of which in terms of the creative industry, sadly, very few. And that's simply because it's a different process that we heard earlier from Steve Swoop, who gave us a good insight into investing in that sector. But it's something that we're going to learn about. So we haven't stopped through COVID. We've raised in excess of 2 million. And typically we see 71 companies, but we do get a lot of applications. So 350, we try to give as much opportunity as we can. So we are keen to grow the investment network, particularly for this region. So simply in our case, roughly 350 proposals come a year. That can vary. I mean, it was 320 for 2019, not much of a drop given COVID, and the highest has been 400. They can be asking for anything from 150,000 to 3 million. And why 150,000? That's the equivalent to what's allowed under a tax allowance called SEIS. In our case, and if it's something you're not familiar with yet, there's lots of tax incentive for investors in terms of investing in early startups, which are very generous even if they fail. We look at 60% of them, and then a 14% are exposed to our angels. So 90% get something. 5% of the total, 350, eventually get through and get a majority of their ask. But unfortunately, a lot of them don't. And for that, in that respect, what we need to do is we need to grow our firepower. And that's something we're working on quite a lot. One of the big problems for the Midlands and why we're active in London is the low number of actual investors, and also the disparity in terms of where the money flows and how it's focused around the southeast. So one of our quests is to develop a stronger investor community within the Midlands so we can bring these people to bring their expertise, their investment capability. It's not just about money, it's about expertise as well. And we're looking to build that community across the Midlands. And for the gaming sector in particular, where we've got the strength in Leamington Spa, we now have the innovation that we've got through Claire's, then we believe that we have the chance to grow a strong community of like-minded people built around the Leamington Spa gaming industry. And some of them who've exited, some of them are quite famous across the sector are working together with us. So what else have we done? Well, we realise there's a challenge here. You've all heard about the Cambridge hub. We've talked about the Heathrow hub. We talked about the London hub. So what we thought, taken a model that was used in Boulder, Colorado. And basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find those early companies with promise and potential and get them the right investors. And if we can get them the right investors, we can help grow those companies and get the unicorns. I mean, the only claim to fame for the Midlands in terms of unicorns is Gymshark. And we need to see more of those great and fantastic companies grow and more unicorns. What we don't want to see is you go down south to get that expertise and the money. We need to keep you local. We need to keep investors local. And we need to keep the entrepreneurs today to become the entrepreneurs of tomorrow who will invest in the entrepreneurs of today. So we can keep that circle going of investment. So if you are an investor and you wondering how to get involved, then we would like to hear from you, because it's a fantastic opportunity to support local businesses. So what else have we done? Well, we run what's called Minerva Birmingham Pitch Up, and it's open to anybody across the Midlands. And this is a competition that we run with our partner institutions, Aston and the University of Birmingham, and we provide workshops and we provide support, and then we have a competition. And invariably it's run part of what they call Venture Fest, where it's introducing investors into the local community. And again, anybody can take part. It gives experience for the companies involved, it gives exposure to the companies, and it also gives the chance of external investors to see what we have in the Midlands. Very successful. We did run it on this platform in January, but we're hoping, fingers crossed, that hopefully in October we'll be able to do the same. But that's not all we're doing. We're still trying to do more. We did, just prior to COVID, try to create a specialist angel sector, and it may be the only one that I'm aware of in the UK. I don't know whether there's one in London, but if there is, we're definitely the one only outside of London. So we're bringing those specialist people around our community to educate our existing angels on how to invest in the digital and creative sector. Digital is a big word, and we know lots about digital. We don't know much about films, and we need to learn about the gaming industry as well. So by mixing together with these specialists and together with our angel network, we hopefully will increase the firepower. It's not going to be easy, and we realize it's a long haul, and we have done it once, but post-COVID, that's only going to be an area of concentration. And again, we have this fantastic ability around Leamington. However, don't just think about the Midlands. We want to take this nationally. We have the Shard in London through Warwick Business School, who is one of our supporting partners, being part of the University of Warrington, Warwick, and we want to grow that and grow that expertise. So we've got to continue. We're going to get out there and we're going to educate the community. We want to educate people within the region what angel investing means. This is what we did at our last educational series, where we had 1,000 registered and 650 attend. And what we want to do is we want to bring people in as investors and support our local community, help us bounce back from COVID, and hopefully enjoy that 3-year bounce back that everybody's predicting, like we had the roaring 30s after the last major pandemic. So again, we're not going to leave you on your own. We're building that community, we're educating, we're supporting, and we're helping you become an active investor if you're interested in this. If you're a company, it's an opportunity to learn what investors think and do. And lastly, what are we delivering? Minerva as a group. Well, we've got this amazing investor base. We've got supported companies. We've got a proven model. We're part of this Midlands community, which generates more intellectual property than Cambridge and Oxford together. We've got access to the London market in many respects. We're truly a gateway to innovation in terms of being the major angel network across the region, and we're willing to support our digital and creative community as much as we possibly can. And what we want to be is the go-to organisation for your needs. Still a lot of work to do, still need to increase our firepower, still need to get that reputation, but we're laying the foundations to try to become the best there is in the UK, so we can really challenge some of those hot hubs that we speak about in the rest of the UK. That's me. Over to you, Claire.
Fantastic, thanks so much. Is there any kind of entry level for an investor to sort of come to Minerva and you know, do they have to have a certain level of money in order to kind of work with you?
Well, there is actually a specification that is provided by the FCAs, because what they don't want is they don't want people to give their pension away. So there has a minimum requirement in terms of you have to meet a specification of sophisticated investor, which you have to self-certify, and that means you've got investment experience, or you need to have £100,000, which isn't necessarily your mortgage in your house. So what they don't want people to do is they don't want people to come along who's just a general public and are not experienced as an investor. That's the only requirement. In terms of a minimum entry level, well, we say between £5,000 and £10,000, which is somewhat set by the companies. But again, there's major tax advantages out there in terms of if the company qualifies under the enterprise investment schemes, and even if the company goes bust, they get lots of tax advantages. So, for example, I think it's typically around £10,000. If you invest it in a company, it's effectively putting 2,700 in if it doesn't work. So, we're the only country where we celebrate and reward failure through a tax system. So, lots of people can get a great benefit from the investment tax system that's available, accepting that you're investing in what is a volatile opportunity which may or may not succeed.
And how does someone kind of get matched to projects? What's the process in order, if I kind of say, yes, I want to invest in British businesses and I'm kind of up for investing in creative or digital projects, how is that match made, or how do I receive proposals?
Well, first of all, you join us. We have a low entry level because we operate to a not-for-profit objective. So we just would love to break even. Unfortunately, we're not there yet, but that shows how much we support companies and what we do. So basically, you can join a network, and then what the network does, it introduces proposals to you. You consider them as a collective, you learn from the collective. In our case, and during COVID, we've run webinars. People see the pitches, companies come to the pitch is discussed amongst the membership, and then they decide whether they want to invest. It's very much an individual decision. And what you're trying to get by working together with a network is you're trying to get that expertise that you may not have. For example, intellectual property, as Steve said, legal expertise in his earlier presentation, or general marketing expertise. And different people have different questions. And that's the beauty of working together as a collective in an angel network.
Perfect. And then one final question before we go over to Irene. How have you seen COVID kind of affecting the investor community, either sort of regional within the West Midlands or nationally?
Initially, people found it quite exciting. They were at home. What they were doing wasn't as much as they used to do. They could spend more time. They started looking at investment, and we did quite well. When the second lockdown came, things began to trickle, and the investment began to drop. And now it is at a small trickle because people are waiting for the return and the bounce back from the situation we're in now. And one of the problems is that businesses that are surviving now tend to be good, strong businesses. And there's a lot of quality out there. The problem is there's not much that cash to support it. In the Midlands, we're quite lucky because we have lots of initiatives such as the Midland Engine Investment Fund. So there is lots of public money, but we do need that private cash to come back to the market and invest. And unfortunately, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If people say, well, angels aren't really investing now, then angels don't invest because that becomes an expectation of them. But I have to be honest, it is more challenging at the moment because people are waiting, and they're always waiting for that unicorn that may come tomorrow as well, which can be another challenge. So when you're stuck for choice, because there's lots of good companies looking for money, then choice becomes harder, investment becomes more difficult, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So to date, we've got some really good new investors. COVID came, our membership dropped by 50%. We are seeing between 6 to 10 angels a month join us and have done throughout the period. So our numbers are back up, and we've got some people who've made some really big exits actually during this COVID period. So hopefully come 8th of March, the money will flow again, the tax will turn on, and everybody will be looking for the tax advantages before the 5th of April. So fingers crossed, that's what will happen next.
Sounds amazing, fantastic. And contact you if they are interested in investing in the region.
Of course, you can contact me through the Hoover app, or just go to our website, minerva.uk.net.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alex. And now on to Irene, who will give us a kind of national picture in terms of investor opportunities.
Yeah, I think the brief here was on the creative industry. So I think, you know, just to those in the audience, let's just talk about the creative sector and what the opportunity is in it, and specifically locally. Because one of the things we know is that there are many individuals that think and want to do investment, but don't know quite whether as much on the creative sector as they wish to, or as Alex has said, who to join up with to be in that network. So, I mean, important thing to say is the creative sector is such a huge element of the UK economy. It's adds 112 billion almost of GVA every year, earns around 12.8 million an hour in terms of what it's generating overall, and is a hugely exporting sector, 36 billion exported. The other thing to say about the businesses in the sector is we are seeing many more scale up to a sizable scale of generating more than 10 million plus of revenue. And we estimate across the country there's about 1,600 scale-up businesses across all of the country who have the turnover of 43 billion, majority exporting, and have managed to raise 4 billion in this last period of a few years, of which 3.8 billion is coming from equity. Because not surprisingly, rightly, for scaling a business and also scaling the creative sector, you do want to see that risk capital flowing in, not just from the angel community, which is incredibly important for the seed level of investment, but then on the follow-on fundings. If you take that down a level then and move into the games sector, which is, as you pointed out, Claire, such an important part of the Coventry and Warwickshire and Leamington Spa area. It's the fastest growing entertainment industry in the world, generating about 150 billion today, but expected to go to 200 billion in the next few years. And in that, we're expecting in the UK for that market by 2023 to be worth 5.4 billion, and that's a huge opportunity. Therefore, if we get the right investment opportunities and businesses into that market. Now, as we've pointed out, Leamington Spa is an absolutely key cluster of our games sector, and one of the things we know when we've looked at local growth, there are three drivers of local growth. One is access to the skilled talent. Two is actually developing that cluster opportunity. So how does one create the ecosystem in the locality, which you and Alex have spoken about? And the third is getting the right actually access to risk capital at the local level, which is about how we build up the angel VC and follow-on growth capital in the UK and locally. The GVA in Leamington Spa of these businesses is about 100 million, which is terrific. And as you've said, Claire, they are growing. 1 in 50 people in Leamington Spa work for a games developer, and that is growing exponentially. You've got a good mix of ingredients there, and you can see how that compares across the country. So there is a huge opportunity for investors going into this segment and linking in to the businesses that are locally developing and growing. You have around overall across all sectors about 541 visible scale-ups in the West Midlands. These are the businesses that are going, as I say, at that 10 million plus level. And as you've highlighted, Claire, there's around 16 creative scaling companies in your locality, and you've mentioned some of them: Codemasters, Pixel Toys, etc., Facepalm Studios, all very much growing, and many more underneath them. And we're just showing you a snapshot here of those that have really made it into that larger scale level. There are many more underneath them. Now, what's important to know about the creative sector and the businesses locally is their aspirations. If we move on to the next slide, and also what the investor dynamics are. So investor dynamics are, you know, people want to invest, as Alex has said, in the creative sector, but there's a recognition, particularly interested in digital media, content and gaming, because they've got scalability, they're tech enabled, and they can be overall global. And there's a certain desire to, as Alex has highlighted, in our different investors, to grow the number of players that can become investors into the segment overall. If you just just move on, Richard, to the next slide. And that's something that we've seen in terms of the pattern of discussions we've had with investors in terms of wanting to understand the sector, get investment to co-investment opportunities and access to deal flow, which is where, Claire, your connectivity with the businesses you're working with and how the investor base can link to that and really build out on that is an important factor, as it is as well in the Scale Up programme that has been developed locally in the West Midlands, sponsored by, at the time she was in government, Margot James, who of course is your Vice Chancellor now. If you'd like to move on to the next slide about why actually, to pick up both Claire and Alex's points, we think the creative sector is quite an interesting one to get involved with. 8 out of 10 expect to grow this year, despite all of the different COVID dynamics. 8 out of 10 of our creative sector businesses expect to grow and to grow at scale. And many of them expect to grow in employment as well. If we just move on to the next slide, you can see that they expect to grow 6 in 10 in turnover and employment, and that is very different to the rest of the SME base. You've got really growth companies locally, you've got creative growth companies, and they're very determined to move forward both in turnover and employment, despite what we're seeing in the COVID dynamics. And I think that's a really important aspect for you as investors to recognise. If you move on then to the next slide, they're also, as I said, already exporting, and they plan to do more exporting, and they want to export to ever more the markets that are outside of Europe. Europe is an important market, but there's a real opportunity, and it was reflected on by Steve earlier about the China, Asia, Middle East markets, and we're seeing that coming through from the creative sector. So again, those of you that are investors that have really good links to that international base, a real opportunity to introduce these companies to it. If you then look at their challenges and what they're looking to see and the barriers to support, you've got a range of barriers in terms of the creative sectors and the businesses' views and their scaling journey about what they need help with. Getting access to domestic and international markets really important. So investors that can bring that linkage, the talent aspect, really critical, Claire, hence why that linkage to the universities really key. But also that sense of we don't have enough capital yet to grow and grow as far as we want to. And some of that issues are compounded by, and if we move on to the next slide, is that whilst creative use a lot of, and our businesses use a lot of external finance, they're less likely to use equity risk capital than their peers. And some of that is really because they don't necessarily understand all of those investment opportunities and who the investors are. So there's a big knowledge and connectivity piece that we need to move on and address, which I think comes from, as you've touched on, what type of hub do you create? Cambridge has been very good in life sciences at building that connectivity in very close run hubs where you connect not just the university and the investors, but also the mentors and the marketplace. And I think that's a really important factor going forward. If you just move on, Richard, we do know that creatives are using angel investors, VC and crowdfunding. We also know, as I've said, move on, Richard, they don't understand all of the different types of finance and to apply it. So it's really important that as investors, we try and demystify that for them, and the ecosystem tries to do that too. Just want to move on, Richard, to the next slide. One of the things that our creative sector is looking for as well, and our businesses, is mentoring, support in peer networks. So how do you create that environment that they can learn as well from each other? And again, today's a great example of that, and the investor team can certainly make additional opportunities to that. Moving on then, and there's an opportunity to do more mentoring and more peer networks, particularly for the sector locally. There's still a feeling we don't have enough of that available. So I think the work you're doing, Claire and Alex, and what you're bringing together as clubs are going to be important. And the investors out there, this is what the role you can play in helping these businesses develop. if we then move on in terms of a couple of the programs that are up and running at the moment. So the Creative Scale Up program, I mentioned Margot James sponsored it as part of the role when she was in government in DCMS. This was designed to address two key elements of our creative sector's needs and the business's needs. One was getting that investor readiness and getting the understanding of the marketplace and how to connect into that investment pool. And that's being run by Fiona Latter, who's I know in the audience now and had some great success, which she can share with you. The other was to build out the investor base into the creative sector, which we as a Scale Up Institute and UK Business Angels are working with the Business Bank to try and build out that investor community, building on what Alex has pointed out in terms of that expansion of investors that are interested in this. And that's why it's great to see around 40 odd people here today are interested in this. And one of the things we'll be launching very shortly is a complete immersive investing creative resource kit for you who want to be involved in and considering that investment opportunity. It will take you through not only what it is to be an angel investor, but what is the real opportunities in all of the different aspects of the creative sector, a very deep dive into the gaming sector, bringing together the opportunities, what investors are currently looking at, what they see as the overall trajectory and what they're looking at in the different ways in which they're investing in the businesses. And we've got some great experts around that. And then self-learning that you can do in terms of taking you through that journey to be angel ready, investor ready, and linked then into partners like Minerva and others who can give you that network. So this will be coming very soon. It's worked with the West Midlands Combined Authority, and we're looking forward to any of you on this call who wants to get access to that. Do connect through Claire and ourselves, because we do want you to make really good use of that. So I'll stop there in the interest of time. We've got to think about 15 minutes then, Claire, for some questions, and I can see the chat room is beginning to kick off a little bit. So let's open it up to the floor, and over to you, Claire, to coordinate that.
Perfect, thank you so much. Yeah, so we've had a couple of questions coming in here. So the first one was about visibility and how, as a community, the creative and digital companies here can be more visible. And I know certainly in terms of events, they've all kind of either gone online or some of the meetups have kind of folded, which is why that Creative Futures is kind of really keen to bring together all of these different networks and groups under kind of one Mill Street as well. So there are exciting things happening, but I suppose, Irene, there's something around Leamington's visibility within the sort of national makeup. How do you think that we should become more visible to kind of investors and creatives?
Yeah, one of the things that we'll certainly share with you offline as well, and one of the things we try and do is bring some visibility to these businesses, and that's why we create the index that we do, and we look at what's happening at a local level. What Cambridge did very successfully is create a Cambridge cluster map. It tracked basically all of their high potential, high growth businesses, and it's a combination of the ecosystem and the university working on that. So it's a very interactive map, and we'll work with you on how you could evolve that. I think you should have exactly that for all of your scale ups, but also for your creative scale ups, and really be putting out there to the world what is happening at a local level, who are the businesses on the different programs. And I completely recognize the point there as well. I think one of the factors in driving a cluster and an ecosystem is you have to be joined up. It's no good being silo oriented. So there are really good initiatives happening. Are you joining them together? Are you collectively bringing together the force of your knowledge and putting it into a very visible space that suddenly investors from around the country can see and around the world? And I think there's opportunities there, Claire, and how you're building on that hub approach. We know Bradbury Institute is a great example of life sciences. Alderley Park is. How do you create the right creative hub that is known to be the place to go when you want to meet these businesses, when you want to hear about the investment opportunities? And I think it's really creating a very structured process to that we see operating elsewhere, and really happy to sort of, pick up on that afterwards, because you've got the ingredients there, but how do you align it, join it up, and really build the tools that can showcase it.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's lots of activity going on, and there's lots of, like Interactive Futures happening every year to kind of bring together the sector. And then, it's how to signpost people to the sector and the value of it, and coordinate between the university and those networks and the meetups as well. Alex, did you have anything to add in terms of how to kind of make that ecosystem and the opportunities here more visible? Oh, you're muted.
I do agree, it has been relatively invisible in Leamington Spa, because I'm also a member of Leamington Chamber of Trade, and it's really only recently the council's just woken up to the creative quarter that we continue to profess about. And I do agree that without somebody leading it, it is difficult. But now we have a little bit more of a hub and a little bit more focus in Leamington, and I think that will hopefully precipitate greater connectivity. But as Irene said, it's monitoring that connectivity, it's building that connectivity. And one of the things, it's not volume that's important, it's quality. And if we can get a good name for quality and being innovative, then we will attract that risk capital that we need and those investors that we need to help support the ecosystem and grow from there. I mean, it's how they've done it all over the world, and we just need to capture that.
I just add as well, I think you've got a great situation with your mayor there in Andy Street and the combined authority, the role they play and he plays and that team plays in raising the knowledge. That's a great champion. Margot James is a great champion. So how do you engage your individual ecosystem leaders and then also showcase the great business leaders like Steve, who you had on speaking, and what their business is doing and how they're developing things. So all of those role models are really important as well, and the champions as well, Claire. And then relationship manage these businesses, get to know them early and make sure you're nurturing them.
Yes, which certainly that's where kind of Creative Futures come in, in terms of getting those startups to stay in the region in the first place, stay, start up and grow is definitely what we want to do.
One point there, Claire, as well. They don't, startups, the growth will not always come from startups. It will come from also those businesses already scaling up or beginning that growth journey. So never ignore those that are on that growth journey, because they can take you even further. So I think it's that combination, as you said, startup and scale up. We know that, the scale up dynamic and those that are already in that growth path can be helped further.
Yeah, it is a challenge of the West Midlands in particular, where we have lots of startups but not enough scale-ups.
When we looked at our research about the startup numbers and their sustainability actually enable scale-up growth, it wasn't one of the factors that made the difference. It was the other three: talent, clusters, and developing those, and that equity piece. So that's why I'm so really pleased about the way you're focusing on the cluster here.
Yeah, and it's been acknowledged, because I'm sitting on a group in the West Midlands Combined Authority that are looking at how we can better support both all the incubators and accelerators that we've got in the region, but also how we can provide targeted funding as well to the development of those startups, scale-ups, or those startups on that scale-ups border, so we can make sure that we get hopefully more unicorns in the Midlands. Which
as you say, it's all about you, but it is about those growth businesses that are fantastic. And I know there's some recognition there as well to Stacey and Dave, who started Silicon Spa, which is great.
Yeah.
Alex, you've mentioned a unicorn a number of times. What does that consist of? What is the unicorn that investors are looking for?
Billion turnover. It's quite simple as that, really. I mean, in its simple classification, I mean, you can take dollars or sterling or euros, but as a unicorn, I mean, there's a whole series, isn't there now? There's dolphins, there's a whole menagerie of animals that choose to qualify. Businesses are certainly, they go through certain points, but why we say a unicorn is basically a business with on track for $1 billion turnover. And that becomes a beacon itself. And once you get one or two of those, then what happens is everybody is pulled towards success. So you not only get angel investors, VC investors, you get corporate investors, you get acquisitions, and basically that's how you grow them. We just need more of them, basically, or better still, we need some of them who are that not to go down south and just stay here, because we had a good presentation from the founder of Jim Shark, and he loved where he lived, and that was so important because that talent is there, and he can share that experience with other people. Because that's the other thing that people don't realise: those entrepreneurs who achieve success can give back, and they can help other businesses grow. And that's what Cambridge has been successful, because people have moved into that bubble, been successful, exited, and given back, both with their experience, their context, and their financial support.
Fantastic. There was a specific question in the chat about registering as an investor. And I wondered, Alex, whether you wanted to kind of talk to that specifically so that everybody could hear.
Yeah. So in terms of becoming an investor, it's very simple. You download the form off the internet, which is are you a sophisticated or high net worth investor? And if you qualify for that, then that's one of the criteria. And then I would suggest to join an angel group that is close to you, that you can find through the UK British Angels Association, or you can contact us. And of course, there is the crowdfunding platforms that people use, which they're open to the general public, of course. So that's the other way. So if you want to flit a 10 or 20 pounds or 30 pounds or £100, that's of course a mechanism for your good self. For companies though, crowdfunding can always be the best proposition, and it depends in terms of what you want and what type of business you are. So there's lots of ways to become an investor. We need to be careful not to be too fixated on unicorns. Now that is true in terms of fixation, but the problem is what we need is a few more successes, and I'm more interested in challenging our southern counterparts so that we can become another hotspot and all benefit from the glory that comes with that.
I mean, I think I just want to reinforce when we talk about scale ups, we're not about unicorns. It's about those growth businesses, those businesses that have the potential to go global and are going global, and how we make sure we're putting them on the map for everyone to support.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the support and the support networks that exist in the West Midlands, it is very good compared to some of the other counties out there. We've just taken part in a innovation program looking where different LEPs have taken part. So that's local enterprise partnerships, and the West Midlands in a really strong position. And in terms of, how do we support growth? I mean, there are fortunately a lot of initiatives. Some may feel there isn't, but then you've got to compare that to other areas. And I think we've got 38 incubators in the West Midlands, so that's quite a lot. And some of them got specific characteristics in terms of who they support, and therefore you've got those subspecialities. But again, somebody says tell our narrative better. Of course, we've got to do that, and we've got to publicise ourselves a lot better. And probably that's one of our major challenges. We don't.
Yeah, and I think also, and you're coming into this, we set up the Scale Up Institute at the end of 2015. I think, we tend to, as a country, talk about small and medium-sized enterprises if they're all the same. And what we're trying to show here is actually they're very different. You've got different stages of growth, from startup to scaling to scale up, and you do need to differentiate. We've got around about 5.8 million SMEs. They generate 2 trillion. 36,500, the scale-ups generate 50% of that, 1 trillion, which is why I think, just to build on some of the points being made, it is all of those good ingredients, Alex, that you've got, and all those different support environments, but having a lens towards the scaling and scale up and high potential, as Warwick and Aston are doing, as the Midlands programme is now doing on creative, is really important. And we too often have either got generic everything for SMEs, and generic for all sectors, or become too fixated on it must be the startup economy. It's a really important part of the equation, but we have got to get into that growth aspect and be focused on helping those businesses, so that the Gymsharks get the available support right at the beginning from the university, the investors, the marketeers and others, in getting them through that cycle. It's a conversation we're having nationally with government as well. How do you make sure the national resources of government, so many of them really do get to these businesses early and get them support that might help them on the innovation or export journey as well? And I think that's how we join that up as well. So just to sort of re-emphasize the point, Alex, about you're on a journey here, and how does that further develop?
Excellent. Thank you so much, both. That's been a really fantastic session, and I hope that everybody watching has enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, we will be available in the Hoover app to answer those. But thank you, Alex. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Alex. Good to see you all. Good luck, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.